Got it. So we're going to be going over exactly kind of, because a lot of times we'll talk about macros and we just toss the word around, and really going into what exactly we mean when we say macros. We're talking about carbs, proteins, fats. I think we've been just using a lot of terminology, and I'm not sure if at any point people have kind of just been nodding along and maybe not too sure entirely of what we're talking about. So a little bit of the basics as to what macros are, but a little bit more nerding out in terms of when you should be eating, what you should be eating, around what times, because I think that's there are certain instances where that is going to be more important than other scenarios, and we'll go over when that's something to pay attention to. But kind of going over some of the basics first, because I do think that's something that I want to make sure that everyone's on the same boat. So super simple, what is a macro? Anytime we say macro, short for macronutrient. So 3 kinds of macronutrients: carbs, fats, and proteins. Macro means big, so a micronutrient is a smaller nutrient. So all those vitamins and minerals and stuff, if we say micronutrients, we're talking about that stuff. If we say macronutrients or just macros, we're talking about carbs, fats, and proteins, which is an important distinction. So when we talk about carbs, there's 2 main kinds of carbs that we're going to be talking about, which is simple carbs and complex carbs. And really the only difference between the 2 from a chemical level is that simple carbohydrates are shorter molecules. Complex carbohydrates are longer molecules. What that basically means is that if you have a simple carb, you're going to digest it a lot faster. And if you have a complex carb, it's going to take longer to digest. So that's actually something that we can use to our benefit, because if something's fast digesting, I can have it around my workout and this can supply me with energy a lot faster. Complex carbs take longer to digest. They also tend to have fiber. So that's something that I might want to have away from my workout, because I don't need it to get into my system right away. I want something that's going to keep me level. It's going to take longer to digest. That way I'm fuller for longer. So complex carbs are usually something you want to have further away from the workout. Think of something like beans, oats, potatoes, right? Some examples of simple carbs. You go super simple. Sugar is a simple carb. That's about as simple as it gets. Gatorade, which is essentially just sugar water. Candy, as long as it's not like super fatty, right? For example, Snickers is a lot of sugar, but it's also got fat in there, so that kind of alters it a little bit. A lot of fruit is a little more on the simple side, but realize that 2 different kinds of carbs, so they different timing in terms of your goals. And I put something about the glycemic index in here because this is something that's been asked of me several times when I've gone over nutrition with clients. Is the glycemic index is something that rates a food based off of its ability to spike your blood sugar level. So for example, a tablespoon of white sugar is going to be much higher on the glycemic index scale than 100 grams of sweet potato. So that amount of white sugar is going to spike my blood sugar much more than the sweet potato is going to. That's something that I don't necessarily pay attention to, because, and as we're going to go over, as you have multiple macronutrients, as you add in the fats and the proteins, it's going to alter how quickly you digest things. So realize, for example, going back, the banana, for example, a banana is going to get into your system pretty fast. On the flip side, if I have a banana with almond butter, right, that slows your digestion. So now that banana might not get into my system as quickly. So if that's something that is a question for anyone that ends up watching it, I don't usually really pay much of attention to the glycemic index, because the glycemic index refers to that food in isolation, unless you're just going to sit there spooning sugar as your meal, right? Realize, you tend to have all 3 macros in each meal, usually in different amounts, but they're usually all there. So realize that plays a big factor in how you digest things. And that's also going to play into what you should be eating around your workouts, which we'll talk about. Fats, different kinds of fats. You don't have to know too much about them. Just know that there are different kinds of fats. Just so you know, for reference, there's a PUFA, which is a polyunsaturated fatty acid, a MUFA, which is fun to say, monounsaturated fatty acid, and then you have your saturated fats. So the big difference between the 2 is saturated fats, they're solid at room temperature. Think of things like coconut oil, think of things like butter, right? Those things are saturated. If they're unsaturated, they tend to be liquid at room temperature. So think of things like olive oil, vegetable oil, canola oil, peanut oil. Those things are unsaturated. Really, the only big difference between the 2 is that You are going to read some things about, you know, one thing causing heart disease, and that's not something I'm going to get into too much, but the only thing I'm going to leave you guys with is this. You need both in your diet. I would recommend getting both, and I would recommend getting them from the most unprocessed sources of food that you can get, meaning I would much rather you get your saturated fat from eggs and red meat than you get them from, you know, processed snacks and things that come off the shelf. I'd rather you get it from whole foods. As you do your own research, I always encourage people to do their own research to figure out what they feel comfortable with eating, especially when it comes to things like, you know, again, the debate with red meat and heart disease. And as you do your own research, realize there's something called a healthy user bias. So what a healthy user bias is let's say we have two groups, right? I decide I'm going to do a study and I'm going to take 100 people and 50 of them are only going to eat unsaturated fat and 50 of them are only going to eat saturated fat. And at the end of the study, I find that the 50 people that had saturated fat died at 3 times the rate, were way more likely to be overweight and way more likely to have heart disease. And the people that had the unsaturated fat were the exact opposite. They were the pinnacles of health, right? They were perfect. What the healthy user bias doesn't really factor in is, how do I know if that saturated fat group, you know, if I take my saturated fat group and they're just a bunch of binge drinking chain smokers who sleep 3 hours a night and don't work out, well, yeah, they're going to have a lot of issues. Is that related to the saturated fat? I don't know. There's way too many variables. On the flip side, if the unsaturated fat people are workout, you know, fiends, eat their veggies, drink water, sleep 8 hours, don't eat junk food, yes, their health is going to be better. Is that related to the unsaturated fat, or is that just, you know, it's hard to pinpoint what variable is causing what. So realize as you kind of sift through stuff, diet becomes a little bit more complicated to study because there's so many variables, and it's very hard to find a long-term study that studies people where people are kind of put in a bubble, right? It's hard to control people and make things perfect and controllable. So that's something to keep in mind. Also realize everyone's genetics are going to be different. That's where it gets a little more complicated. We're slowly learning that the way I react to saturated fat might be very different than the way someone else reacts to saturated fat. It comes down to the individual. What I always recommend is making sure you're going to the doctor, making sure you're getting blood work as routinely as possible every 6 months to every year, because it's a great way to check in and see if what you're doing with your diet is working for you. But at the end of the day, just keeping that the healthy user bias in mind as you do your own research. Do what you're comfortable with, but would definitely recommend getting both from unprocessed sources. And then the protein, which is kind of what everyone knows. Everyone knows what protein is. Just a quick biology lesson. Proteins are made up of amino acids. They're super important for things like building muscle. Everyone knows that, but you also need it for immune function. You need it for your hormones, and you need it for cellular repair. So it's a lot more than just getting super swole. You need it for a lot of life functions. A complete protein is something that has all the amino acids that a human being needs. If you're plant-based, one of the biggest hurdles that someone who's plant-based has to deal with is that animal proteins tend to be complete proteins. Most plant sources are not complete proteins. They're incomplete proteins. That means they lack one or multiple of the aminos that you need to make a complete protein. Leucine, I put in there, it tends to be one of the more common ones. You find it in eggs and beans and meats, and find it's much more abundant in animal sources. There's a couple plant sources, but leucine tends to be the one that's most often talked about for whatever reason. One way to get around that, honestly, is to just eat a variety of foods with different amino profiles, and it balances it out pretty well. I'm plant-based, and I've never had an issue with that. As long as you're eating whole foods and eating a variety of whole foods, which you should be doing whether you're plant-based or not, you're going to be fine. But that's just something to be aware of. There was another point I was going to make, but I don't remember it. So maybe it'll come to me later. So we'll just move. I don't remember it. So we'll just move on. Going back to just general health stuff before we move on to the performance stuff. General health guidelines is you want to make sure that you're keeping your blood sugar as stable as possible for as long as possible. So what I mean by that is I don't want to just have a tablespoon of sugar randomly in the middle of my day when I'm not going to work out. Is that, if I do that once in a while, is that the end of the world? No. But realize that your long-term health is the sum of what you do day in and day out. So if on the daily I spike my blood sugar in the morning with, you know, a pumpkin spice macchiato latte frappuccino thing from Starbucks, that's literally just sugar, and there's nothing in there to blunt it, like any fat, because I chose to get the fat-free creamer, that's an unnecessary blood sugar that's not around a workout. So it's not really conducive to performance. And now because I'm not using it for performance, it's outside the realm of where my body's going to use it for those intra workout nutrients. Over the long term, it could be a contributor to poor health. I'm not saying it's going to, that definitively is going to do anything, but realize that those tiny things that you either do right or wrong throughout the day over the long term create a trend that's either towards positive health or poor health. So that's something to realize. You want to make sure you're eating a variety of food, even if you're not plant-based, and as unprocessed as possible, which you don't need me to tell you in a presentation. If you're just eating Spam and chips all day, you're not going to have really good blood work. But this is the nitty-gritty stuff. So nutrient timing. What am I doing around my workouts, and why am I doing it around my workouts? This is even, I'm going to say, more important during the summer. If you're like me, you sweat like a hog and you just become dehydrated really easily. So it's super important you're getting your electrolytes and your fluids in as well. But you want simple carbs and protein. Again, the simple carbs uptake into your system faster, and you want the protein because, again, protein is the building block of everything that you need for your body. If you're going to tear down your muscles, you're going to need the building blocks to build it back up. You want to get that protein in there. Now realize, as you do this around your workout, you're going to want to be more selective with the kind of protein that you get. For example, I'll use two examples. If you're a meat eater, getting a fattier cut of meat during that time may not be conducive to digesting the carbs fast enough so that I have them in my system. If you're plant-based, tofu tends to be higher in fat, meaning it might not be the best. It might not allow me to digest things as quickly as possible. So you want to choose a leaner protein source. So simple carbs, protein, and electrolytes. That could be as simple as putting salt on your food. It could be having a noon tab. It could be having, this is a time where if you like Gatorade, this would be a great time to have something like Gatorade. It tends to have more electrolytes and more carbs as well. Like coconut water. But those are the things that you want to have before, after, and if your workout is super intense and more than an hour, I would say as long as you're keeping your daily calorie intake in line with your body composition goals, you could even have something in the middle. I know RP, Renaissance periodization, which is what one style of eating is very big on that, and it definitely works. But you don't want to have so much in the middle of your workout that you're left starving the rest of the day because you used up all your carbs. So you do have to do a little bit of budgeting in that way. Far out from your workout, right? So if you're breakfast, dinner, if you work out in the middle of the day, you want to have the complex carbs. So veggies, sweet potatoes are a great source of that. Oats, rice. When you have the rice, I've been dabbling more in eating white rice versus brown. I find it digests a little bit easier. Brown rice has more fiber, so it is even more of a complex carb than white rice is. So there is a little bit of a difference in that respect, but you want to make sure that if brown rice makes your tummy feel funny, don't have it. Get the protein and the fat and the fiber in. It's going to be a lot easier to get the fiber in because, again, going back to the complex carbs tend to have that fiber. So oats, beans, stuff that's slower to digest, you want to have, maybe not first thing in the morning if you're not a breakfast eater, but you want the meal that is on both ends, in the beginning, in the middle, and the end of the day, that are furthest from the workouts. Those are going to have the most fiber, the most fat, the most complex carbs, because those are the ones where I don't need to quickly spike my blood sugar and get nutrients shuttled into my system. So realize there's like a purpose for each kind of carb and nutrient that I'm introducing into my body. There's a lot of words on the side just to kind of explain to people that aren't watching the video why this is happening. But basically, why don't I want fat around my workouts? And the reason for that is fat slows down your digestion. I think I mentioned this before. So if I slow down my digestion, I might not have all of it in my system, right, digested in my bloodstream before my workout. So now I have this food just sitting there, which isn't the end of the world. But one thing to realize is if you're going to work out, and if you're going to work out super intensely, your body kind of partitions where it's going to send the most blood flow and blood supply. Usually one of the places that gets it cut off first, the non-vital system, your digestive system. So that means your digestive system is going to slow down in the middle of the workout. So now you have the fat slowing down your digestive system, and your digestive system is going to slow down because there's just not enough blood flow to support intense exercise and your intestines. Is it going to make you sick? It might. Some people, they can eat, a meatball parmesan right before their workout. You see those freaks at meets, right? They're sitting there having an entire Subway sandwich. I don't know how they do it, and they're fine. Some people get a really upset stomach. If I have something really fatty before I work out, I will probably vomit. So realize, if you're puking, you're not going to have a good workout. So that's something to keep in mind. But again, over the long term, your performance will probably be better if you're fully fueled every single time. Even if you don't have an upset stomach, you might be able to inch out a little bit more from your workouts if your muscles are fully replenished and ready to go. Why is there no fiber? So fiber slows digestion, see the explanation that I just gave, but there's two kinds of fiber, and I think this is important because you guys really want to aim to get enough fiber in your diet, not only for long-term health, but it's really going to ensure that you feel better, you're not as bloated because everything's passing through the way it should. But there's two kinds of fiber. There's insoluble fiber. I want you to think of that just like a broom. It just brooms and makes everything pass through. But it's a soluble fiber that I can't pronounce for whatever reason. It's not even a hard word, which is embarrassing. Soluble fiber, when it pulls water into your intestines and it becomes this gel-like substance. So it helps everything pass through smoothly, which is great, except for the fact that one of the mechanisms that we use in laxatives is to just flush your digestive system with a ton of water. So now your digestive system is not working at peak capacity, and we're shoving water into it as you're jostling everything around and you're moving around. It's just a recipe for being stuck on the bathroom the whole time as you're trying to work out. Again, there's some freaks that can do whatever they want and not abide by any of these rules and feel fine. There's some people that can, eat the wrong way, and then they pay for it because they feel like garbage during their workouts. But again, at the end of the day, from a performance standpoint, even if you feel fine, you're still not inching out that last couple of percentage points that you could be just from optimizing the timing of your nutrition. So around your workouts, you don't want fiber, you don't want fat. Away from your workouts, bring on the fiber and the fat. That's going to help keep you fuller longer. It's going to help stabilize your blood sugar. Fat's important because not only is it a pretty nice source of calories if you are trying to gain weight, even if you're not trying to gain weight though, it helps keep you fuller longer. You need it for your skin, plays a lot of vital functions. Fiber is important for digestive health, and it's going to keep you fuller longer. So you do need those things just at the right time. So just an example of this was yesterday. I'm losing about half a pound a week, so nothing too crazy, but I am on a fat loss diet. So when you're trying to lose weight, one of the things that I have found make or break your ability to retain muscle as you drop weight is your nutrient timing. I've done it both ways. I've done macros. I'm going to eat. I'm going to stay with it, the if it fits your macros school of thought, which is, all right, as long as I'm within that number throughout the day, I'm just going to eat whatever I want, whenever I want. And I've done it really strict where, okay, I'm going to have the bulk of my carbs around my workout. I'm going to make sure that everything that's not in a workout is complex carbs, right? Really being on top of the nutrient timing and everything I laid out above. And I found it actually made a really big difference as I started to get leaner. When you have 60 plus pounds to lose, right? When I was close to 200 pounds, I could kind of just eat whatever the hell I wanted. If I was in a calorie deficit, I was going to get healthier. I was going to lose weight. And there was enough fat as a buffer where I really wasn't going to just readily drop muscle. I'm still not shredded by any stretch of the imagination, but I do have to work a little bit harder to retain the muscle that I've put on. So realize that as you get deeper and deeper into whatever your fitness goal is, whether it's gaining weight, which presents its own set of challenges. I'll talk about that in a second. Or losing weight, you want to hold on to what you've got. You don't want to just indiscriminately drop mass. You want to hold on to that muscle mass. Making sure that you're eating the right things at the right time is going to play a really big role in that. On the flip side, though, gaining weight. As you gain weight, right, you're going to be in a calorie surplus. You're purposely putting on weight. It's going to be beneficial for health reasons in the long term to adhere to this because you're not just indiscriminately, screwing with your blood sugar all day, eating whatever, all right? Whole foods, it's going to make it a little bit harder. If you are the person who likes to splurge, yeah, when you're bulking is the best time to do it. But realize at the end of the day, it is going to help a little bit decide whether something turns into fat or muscle when you're timing it. There's something called nutrient partitioning, and I won't go too deep into the rabbit hole of nutritional science. But essentially, the more you can train your body to take the excess nutrients and shuttle it into your muscles for fuel and repair, the better off your body composition at the end of the bulking cycle is going to be. And also the better off you're going to be health-wise, blood work-wise. Your body is going to be more efficient in terms of using fuel, which is good whether you're losing weight or gaining weight. So this is an example of what I did yesterday with my squat day. I squatted, I think, at like 4. Yeah. So I squatted, at like 4 yesterday. So I got up, I had breakfast at around 7 a.m. I'm usually up at around 6 a.m. I don't eat first thing in the morning because it makes my tummy feel funny, so I don't do it. You notice higher in protein, higher in fat, medium in carb, nothing crazy. Noon was when I upped the protein, dropped the fat, started to up the carb because that was my last meal before I worked out. 6:30, I had my post-workout meal, which you notice is only 5 grams of fat. And the reason it had 5 grams of fat was because it came from the protein source, 75 grams of carbs. And then dinner number 2, because there's no way I can fit all that in 3 meals, was a little lower in fat and a little a little lower in carbs, a little higher in fat. So you notice the 2 meals that are the highest in fat are the ones that are furthest away from my workout. And the 2 that are lowest in fat are immediately pre and post workout. So I'm kind of still abiding by those rules, making sure that I'm not doing anything to give myself an upset stomach because I don't need help giving myself an upset stomach. I do that really well on my own. So I just babbled a lot. Brad, specifically, because I know you're currently trying to put muscle on. Any questions? Just threw a lot at you.
No, you summed it up pretty good. You made a lot of sense. With the nutrient partitioning, not too much crap, raising your blood sugars, things like that. Obviously, is going to gain fat and not muscle. You might gain weight, but maybe not the great variety. No, it made a lot of sense, and timing the simple carbs toward the workout and all of that. I absorbed pretty much what you said pretty good. Also, I didn't realize the fats before a workout could be an issue. So that's something else I would look at also for myself.
Yeah, that's a big one, I think, especially for someone who's trying to put on size. Fats are easy because you're getting 9 calories per gram of fat as opposed to protein and carbs, which is 4. So it's very easy to just kind of dump the fat in there, which is great for everything, all the other meals. But yeah, that's a good point. You definitely don't want to try to add too many calories in the form of fat around those meals. It definitely can be detrimental.
My pre-workout snack is often a big thing of celery with a whole pile of peanut butter.
Gotcha.
Make that my post-workout snack.
Yeah, and that would be a great before if you kind of get the munchies before bed, that would also be an awesome before bed snack as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you definitely want. That's why I didn't mention it in here, but if you are, I don't know if you're a protein shake kind of guy, but there's 2 main kinds of protein that are the most popular, and now they have all kinds of exotic proteins. But animal-based, there's whey protein and there's casein protein. And whey protein, both of them are like milk derivatives, but whey is very fast-acting, spikes your blood sugar, gets into your bloodstream faster, you digest it quickly. Casein, though, takes longer to digest. So I don't do this because I can't digest lactose, but when I was doing Renaissance periodization, they're very big on a pre-bedtime meal. They were very big on casein before bed because it is slow digesting. Mm-hmm. So through the night, you're still kind of getting that influx of nutrients. So one of the things that they would recommend is casein. And I know a lot of people would make like casein protein shakes with like peanut butter or almond butter or some kind of butter in there. And it was the casein, which is a slow digesting protein, and a ton of fat. And that was usually a lot of people's, I was in the Facebook groups, and that was a lot of people's like pre-bedtime ritual, which I don't know if First Form makes a casein, John. I know caged muscle does, but I don't know if first form does.
I can comment on that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yes, that's actually interesting. So they their take I thought was very interesting, and I'm still like a little bit up in the air with it because again, nutrition is not my my expertise. I'm definitely getting a better handle on it. But anyways, their meal replacement powder is not casein. They're like of the opinion that casein is not as a good a quality as other whey and some other things. So they think whey is like a superior protein as far as bioavailability and things like that. So again, I'm not that's a little bit outside of my knowledge base as far as what's better but I know like RP, for example, they're like huge proponents. I see them recommend casein very often as like a pre-bed thing. But I've also read things that like, how much is that having that like slow digesting, like how much is it really doing? So I think when it comes down to picking a protein powder, it depends on a couple of things. It depends on the person. If you're using something post-workout and you have if you're going to have multiple frequent meals, I think whey makes a lot of sense, in particular a hydrolyzed whey. So I've been using the first form Formula 1. It's delicious and it mixes very easily. And a lot of the hydrolyzed whey tastes like garbage. So hydrolyzed is like pre-digested, so it's going to digest even faster. So in terms of like a pre-workout or post-workout protein, you're not going to find anything better than a hydrolyzed whey. If you want something that's macro friendly, that's not a first form product, IsoPure is the best because it's 0 carbs. So that's something I've been using when I've been like in a heavy diet. So now that's not going to be a concern for Brad, obviously. So a hydrolyzed whey for a hard gainer is going to be good because it's going to allow you to assimilate the protein extremely fast. I don't think casein really has its place for someone who's a hard gainer. I think casein has its place when you need something that's convenient. And for somebody that's going to probably have less frequent meals or like a very long period of time. That being said, I'd rather have someone eat whole food instead of. But if you have to use a supplement for whatever reason, so like I just made like a casein, not a casein pudding, but I use the level 1 protein, which is so first form. It's a whey concentrate and a milk. It's whey concentrate, whey isolate, and a milk protein isolate blend with a little bit higher fat, I think a little bit of fat and a little bit of carbs. I think it's like 5 grams of carbs per serving. So it's going to digest a little bit more similar to food. So again, it depends on who you ask. In my opinion, if you're going to get a whey product, whey isolate is really good. And because it's going to be a higher percentage, in order for it to be considered a whey isolate, a higher percentage of the powder has to be from protein, and it's a good quality protein. And we can kind of go on and on about there's different ways like microfiltration and ion exchange, and there's a lot of different things. But you want to get something that's like not denatured. In general, like a whey protein is going to be good if you want an animal-based product. And I know maybe Mel can speak to something that's plant-based, but a hemp and pea blend or either hemp or pea are usually good options for plant-based protein powder. So that's kind of my take. But in general, I don't know if I had to pick one or the other, it's going to be whey. I think I'd rather see, if you want something slower digesting, I think just eat food, or like to Mel's point, you could add fat. To Mel's point, you could add fat to the whey and that's going to slow down the digestion, right? So that's just another option too. So if you want something that's a little bit slower. So I think if I had to pick one, animal and plant-based aside, I think whey is kind of like the king of protein powders of bioavailability and like the quality of the protein. People, if you had a gun to my head kind of thing, like that's like the choice I would make. So that's kind of my take on that. But I would always I would consider whole food whenever possible. So.
I agree on that. And then that's also a good point, is realize that not all protein is created equal. Even if you are looking at the nutrient content, like John said, there are different ways of making the protein. you want to make sure that it is of good quality. And you also want to make sure, again, even if you're trying to gain weight, if it's full of garbage and you see 30 grams of sugar in it, it depends on when you're having it. I personally like to get something that is really just straight up protein as much as possible, because if I want to add carbs to it, whatever I want to do to it, I want it to be a product that I can buy and have whenever, because if I need another macronutrient in there, I can just add it myself. If it already comes with a bunch of stuff preloaded, it's just a personal preference. It's a little fixed as to what I can do with it. If you're plant-based, I haven't tried First Forms, but I was looking through the comments, and it seems to be getting like universally really good reviews, which is very hard to do for a plant protein. A lot of times you're going to find issues with the solubility. It just clumps up and tastes like hot garbage. Vega Protein is another one that I've found is pretty good. I would recommend, if you are going to get most plant-based proteins, if you can splurge on like the little it's like the little Food Ninja, the little shaker cup sized. Those are great. You might need more than just shaking to get it to fully dissolve. And then another option, if you're still in the plant-based realm, is TrueNutrition.com allows you to custom make your blends. One thing that I've found is that from each protein source, there's different amino acid content, which is great if you're plant-based. You do, like I said, want to get that variety of aminos from different sources. But one thing I've noticed as you start to play with it is sources have different they dissolve different. So if you mix, rice and hemp and pea and a little bit of everything, it's going to dissolve way better than just straight up pea. Not to mention the nutritional profile is going to be a little bit better. So realize it is definitely something that requires a little bit of trial and error to see what tastes best, what you're going to consistently use, what sits better with your body. Because again, at the end of the day, we can give you recommendations. And if you tell me, hey, it hurts when I do that, or it makes me bloated or whatever, first and foremost, respect your body. So we can give you a recommendation, but if it just doesn't sit right with you, there are workarounds. There's always a million other ways to do things. So these are just general guidelines. Don't blindly try to force it, because it's never a good thing. I think that's about the end of my rant, unless John has anything to add. I'm trying to see if I missed anything, but that's pretty much it.
Just scroll through really fast, because I was kind of like half listening and trying to like so many. I don't even want to get it. I don't want it to be on the recordings. I'm not going to say. No, I thought that was great. I think it's just really important to understand like I think this was really good, Mel, because I think people get really caught up with, I think, just macros, and they don't understand like just because something has like protein from rice is different from protein from beef, which is different from protein from broccoli. A whey protein powder is going to be different from a casein powder. How your body responds to 100 grams of carbs from carrots is going to be different from 100 grams of carbs from a potato, 100 grams of carbs from a pixie stick. It's going to be like way different. So I think that's really important. And it's one of the things that kind of annoys me sometimes, because I do think that, yes, at the end of the day, calories in, calories out is king, but I think we still want to have quality food. And just because something is quality whole foods doesn't mean it's not going to taste good. So I think we want to pick foods that we enjoy, that fit our goals and fit our macronutrient and micronutrient needs. So I think that's really key. If that includes supplements, that's great. If it doesn't, that's great too. I personally, for the past year, I did not use a lot of supplements. For the past 6 months, I've been using a ton because my diet's been more aggressive. So I've needed to substitute some things for convenience, because it's not super convenient to eat 350 grams of protein from just chicken or beef. It'd be too much. It would get too expensive, and my jaw would probably fall off at that point. So as much
5 chickens a day, Jesus.
It's a lot of chickens. It's a lot of chickens. So, and I do, and I probably eat 50 grams of protein from just food, which is a lot. When a lot of people are like, yeah, I eat 200 grams of protein a day, and then I see it, I'm like, no, you don't, bro. Like, sorry. But it's a lot of food. So it's something to consider. And I'm not saying people like, it doesn't mean that you should be eating like Mel or eating like me. It's information for you to digest. Pun intended. I'm going to leave it at that, because I'm not going to say anything more productive. So thank you guys for listening. We're going to hopefully get this recording out to you, and we'll see you next time.